we were very interested. Our attorney was like, well, if it really costs that much, there's no way that they can do what they say they can do. So I think our attorney spent time with you, and then he came back and was like, wow, it's everything we need. So we moved forward, and at every step, you guys exceeded the expectations of our, attorney and his staff getting everything set up. When we've had questions, you guys have been totally responsive. You've been very helpful. It's been easy to understand and follow, and it does absolutely everything we need at truly a very small fraction of the cost of some of the other guys.
Welcome to the 212 Startup Series. That was the voice of Steve Wilcenski, co-founder of a very exciting nanotechnology company called BNNano. In addition to talking about the groundbreaking technology he's working on, Steve provides a great overview on what it's like to be a 212 cap table customer. He dives into the massive cost savings, the ability to easily model different types of raises, and please all of the people on his cap table.
So what is the application of BNNano? Like, who's your customer?
So right now there's really two distinct customer groups, if you will. One of the things that the boron nitride nanotubes can do is they can really increase the strength and the mechanical properties of another material. And we're doing a lot of work with customers to strengthen plastics and polymers. One of the customers that we can talk about that we're partnering with to trying to develop some solutions is a company called TWO12 out of Texas. And they are developing next generation ammunition for really for the military, where they're removing the brass and they're replacing it with polymers. So we're working with them to help strengthen their polymers. There's also a big push in aluminum, and with the work that we're doing in aluminum, where we've been able to significantly improve the strength of aluminum. There's a tremendous amount of applications ranging from automotive to aerospace to anything that you want to make lighter and stronger. So the mechanical improvements takes up about half of what we do. The other half is for thermal improvements, because the material that we have is a very excellent thermal conductor, but it's also electrically insulative. So that allows us to be incorporated into next generation and novel thermal management materials for electronics, for microelectronics, things like 5G base stations, potentially electric vehicles for batteries, anything that has a problem dissipating heat, where they're really looking for some new materials to do that. And that's another area where we're very active. A thing that's starting to come along a little bit more is textiles, because we can compound into things like polyesters and nylons, working with more technical textiles, things like tents and ropes and other materials. But it really is it's a wide ranging material. Another big project that we see in the horizon is water purification. We've been able to demonstrate, and other groups have demonstrated, that you can use the boron nitride nanotubes to remove PFAS, or the forever chemicals, from water. So we see that as an area where we're going to have a lot of growth this year and moving into the future.
That's great. So it looks like, are there a lot of commonality between what your product offers and what carbon fiber might offer?
It's similar, but yeah, again, a lot of carbon fiber composites. In some cases, especially if you're using composites in combination with metals or aluminum or other materials, you get a corrosion from the electrochemical effect. So there is a desire to remove anything that conducts electricity in those cases. But we can also enhance the strength of carbon fiber composites, and we've done that as well. We've proven that we can do that when we mix into the resins. Essentially, you create a new type of prepreg, if you will. But it is, I'd say it's complementary. But our focus has been more, on some of the plastic materials, and then the high temperatures, right? The carbon materials really can't withstand, getting mixed into things like aluminum and other metals. So our focus has really been on what carbon can't do.
I see. Very, very cool. Dustin, can you still hear us? Okay.
Yep, I gotcha. Yeah, Steve, when you were thinking about your go-to-market strategy, when you have such a wide, when you have so many different use cases for your product, how does that impact your strategic thinking as an entrepreneur, both today, but also in the very early days when you were just getting off the ground and you're trying to figure out how to get your first customer, but there's so many potential customers in front of you. How do you sort through that
You broke up a
problem?
little bit. I think you were asking how did we sort of narrow down what we were going to be focused on.
Yep.
And there's a couple interesting things there. The first one is we make one type of nanomaterial. So the boron nitride nanobarbs that we make it's in powder form, and we don't need to modify that in any way if we're trying to improve the mechanics or if we're trying to improve the thermal properties. So the same material that's used for water purification is what goes into the strengthening of the aluminum or being compounded into the plastics. So from a sales of the raw material, we're pretty agnostic to the particular market because we're selling, one thing. Where we spent our own development resources and dollars, we focused on areas where we had some internal expertise. So we've worked with, compounding materials in plastics and polymers. So that's something that we were pretty familiar with. So we actually, in our same facility where we manufacture the nanomaterials, we do the compounding and extrusions of those plastics and polymers. The other area where we had, a pretty good deal of expertise is in working with aluminum. So we actually have, a very small casting capabilities within our Burlington facility as well. So we were able to prove out some ideas before we approached a true casting house that we're working with, that we're partnering with now. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to focus on areas where we had an expertise and where we could truly be disruptive. Being able to double the strength of a metal is pretty unheard of these days. You usually get small incremental changes. So that was something that really excited us. And, improving the properties of, polymers, mechanical polymers by 30 to 40 up to 50% could be disruptive as well. And then adding the ability to create something like a plastic heat sink was something that interested us as well.
And what about pricing? When you're going to market and you're selling the same physical good, but into different markets or different use cases, would you keep pricing consistent or would you change pricing based on the application?
I
Am I
didn't get
breaking up
that
again?
question. Sorry, you were breaking up pretty bad.
Pricing, how would you price your product when you were going to market, considering you had different use cases but the same product?
Yeah, so the pricing is certainly a challenge, especially with the nanomaterial. There are a few folks that got to the market before we did, and the typical pricing is done by the gram, and you typically only add a fraction of a weight percent or a very small percentage compared to the overall weight of the material you're adding it to. And the sort of the established pricing when we got into the game were $1,000 or $2,000 a gram. Because we figured out how to do this in what we call an elegantly simple fashion that's pretty low cost, we came in at a few $100s a gram. So we were able to have conversations with a lot more people because we not only had the offering at a few $100s a gram. We have a roadmap to get well below $100 a gram and potentially reach the same pricing as what carbon nanotubes are on the marketplace today. So it certainly is dependent upon how much the customers are going to buy, but we also took the approach that if it's a area where we saw a lot of potential moving forward, that we would be willing to cost share and subsidize the pricing in order to have access to and to be able to speak about the performance and how the material worked in given applications. So we have a product that is as pure or more pure than anything else that's in the market. We have a patent around, or we have a pending patent around the armor cladding, if you will, the way we've changed the morphology, and we have right now prices that are less than half of anything else that's in the marketplace. So we think we have the best material at the lowest price, and we have the ability to be very, very aggressive moving forward. We believe we will be able to reduce the cost by 50% year over year for the next few years.
So based on everything you're describing here, it looks like a very capital intensive business. Is that a true statement?
No, it's really not, and that goes back to before we started BNNano, before we founded the company, our backgrounds were in things like micro machines, LEDs, where you get very high prices the first year, but you get tremendous decay year after year. So we knew it was important to not only understand the supply chain, the cost curves, but also to manage the capital and the expectations. What we've done is we have taken equipment that exists for another industry and we've repurposed it. So we take off the shelf, readily available industrial equipment and we just use it in a different manner. The footprint for our manufacturing space is also very small. If you had a 15 by 15 foot square, that really is what we call a manufacturing unit, and that is the floor space that we need to hold a one unit of our manufacturing. So we found a way to make this that's really different than anybody else, and it doesn't take a lot of capital, it doesn't take a lot of space, and it doesn't take a lot of resources. So that was just as important to us when we started the business, to not only have a good technology, but have a good understanding of how we can make it today and how we can continue to reduce the cost as we move forward.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Great to hear. So what was your thinking? Now let's get into some of the tactical aspects of how you went about setting up your business and raising capital. So were you thinking in terms of, okay, let's get to revenue quickly and raise capital through revenue, or definitely needed external capital to bootstrap some of the initial startup of the business, and where are you going forward?
We definitely needed the capital. Our strategy moving forward is we were going to stay under the radar until we could absolutely, with 100% confidence, produce and reproduce our material at a high quality. We have experienced in our careers the people coming to you and saying they have the next best thing, but when you try to place an order, you can't actually get it. So we were determined not to do that. So for the first few years, we didn't have a lot of revenue. I would say we got a little bit of revenue in year two, but we essentially, in retrospect, we kind of crowdfunded before crowdfunding was a thing. So we got our seed money from an individual that we had worked with over the years. He's actually the gentleman that invented the LED light bulb that we had worked with, and we had another person give us, the first half to $750,000 to really get the business going, and that was late 2016, early 2017. And then from 2017 all the way to the end of 2020, we funded exclusively through friends and family, and it truly was people that we had a personal or professional relationship, and we were able to raise about 2.15 million over time as we needed it from really 2017 to the end of 2020. And at that point, that was when we participated in the Pepperdine Most Fundable Company competition. We were fortunate enough that we got, the Platinum Award, the top winner for that competition. And then that really opened us up to talking to other potential funding sources, from, family offices to VCs, to some maybe non-traditional funding mechanisms. And we stepped back and we thought, well, we have a tremendous amount of confidence in what we're doing. We've been able to do a lot with just a little bit of money, and we weren't really ready to give up control or equity. So we kind of took a step back and we explored what's out there. And some of the folks that are involved in the crowdfunding platform Net Capital have connections with Pepperdine. So through that competition, we were introduced to the Net Capital group. And we spent a lot of time trying to understand the changes in the laws around crowdfunding and the rules and regulations, and ultimately that became very attractive. So that's the route that we went in 2021.
And what was your experience with Net Capital?
It was when we went in, we were a little skeptical, right? I mean, it sounded almost too good to be true. We can go on this platform and we can open up and we can advertise and we can talk to essentially the world, that we're raising funding. We thought, that sounds great if it would work. Our expectations were, maybe we could raise $250,000 to $500,000 so that we can have a runway to really take our time and find a good partner. And what ended up is we hit the maximum at the time. So we raised, a little over $1 million, and we were actually the first company in North Carolina to ever raise over $1 million on crowdfunding. It ended up being a fantastic experience.
Yep.
We didn't have to spend any money on, we didn't spend a penny on marketing or advertising. It was all just the work and effort of, putting our information on the Net Capital site, participating in some of their events, word of mouth, people that we knew. And it ended up being, a fantastic thing. And the power of it, I think, is amazing. I believe, we had an average investment of around $800, and the majority of the people that invested $100. So we had I think it was somewhere around 1,500 total investors, and we were able to get $1 million. And I think that is, it shows the power of crowdfunding. And the other thing that really excited us was, like I said, we kind of crowdfunded anyway when we started, and we really believe in giving the average person the opportunity to invest in new technologies. And I think the crowdfunding it's an excellent way to do that.
Yep. And how long did it take for you to set up your crowdfunding, and how long did your CF raise last? What is that like?
So we engaged with Net Capital just before the end of the year in 2020. And as a small company, we don't have a ton of resources. So what actually took the longest amount of time was preparing our financials and going through the accounting review. That probably took us about a month. And then after we got that done, then we were able to spend the time in trying to get our message ready and get all of the information and all of the media and the images and stuff for the actual platform or for our offer page. And that took probably about another 3 weeks. So it was the end of February 2021 when we started the campaign, and then we closed on July 31st. So right around maybe 5-6 months for us to hit the million.
What
And
was
the
Net
other beauty of
Capital's?
the other beauty of the crowdfunding is you don't have to wait until the campaign is over to have access to the funding. You can actually pull it out as you go, and that was also very attractive for us to enter into that type of platform.
What was Net Capital's involvement as you were getting ready for the crowdfund, and in terms of like helping you prepare with the marketing materials and messaging and outreach to potential investors and so forth?
Yeah, so they manage and they set up the sort of the offer page. So we would send them files and pictures, and they would help organize it. They would help to make maybe pretty up the presentation and make it fit to the way they do things. They were certainly they provided some help, some information, some suggestions on how to organize what we were showing and what we were displaying. They don't really give you any advice on how best to raise. I don't think that's what they do, and I don't think they're necessarily allowed to do that. But they certainly they set it up. The other thing that Net Capital does is they handle all the compliance on the back end, right? So on our cap table, we have one line item, even though we had around 1,500 investors. So Net Capital manages all of that on the back end. And they also help with some of the compliance on our end, like writing the annual reports. They can help you do that if you choose to. If you choose to, you can have them work on some sales and marketing activity or some marketing and advertising activities. We didn't do that, but they're there for that. They also help manage the message boards and the Q&A that goes along the way. They help to to take care of that, and then throughout the campaign, they offer different opportunities for us to go online to talk about what we're doing on different kind of webinar events and other announcements. But they were fantastic to work with.
Nice. And then
The other
after
thing I
your
have to say is they introduced us to you guys directly. So the reason we hooked up with you is from a direct referral from Net Capital.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And how would you describe your process post crowdfund? What's it been like, managing a large cap table of investors, both from just a communication standpoint, as well as operational. I know you had some challenges with your cap table management, which was one of the reasons that Net Capital reached out. Talk me through that.
Yeah, so we have prior to Net Capital, we probably have somewhere above 20, less than 50 investors. So For us, it didn't seem like that big a deal. We could manage it on an Excel sheet, but our lawyers had always told us, okay, you're growing up a bit now. We need to get a cap table. We need to have a system where we can organize the documentation, the board consents, the cap table. We can sort of have an idea of what things may look like as you go through new raises. So they really convinced us that it was time to have one of these software packages or one of these services in place. They recommended, the guys that everybody knows about. And when we talked to them, they really, they did not have a positive opinion of crowdfunding, and they did not have really a solution to support crowdfunding. And their initial quotation for managing our cap table would have required them to have every individual that contributed through Net Capital, and the cost was going to be more than $100,000 a year. And we told them, that's ridiculous. We've got to, why is it that way? And then through back and forth with our attorney, with their compliance team, and with their business development folks, they settled on something that was less than $100,000 a year, but it was still more than $20,000 a year. And, for a small company, that's a lot of money. There's no way that something that is doing what they say they're going to do should cost that much. And that's when we reached out to Net Capital. They introduced us to you, and with our discussions with you, it sounded like something that we were very interested in. Our attorney was like, well, if it really costs that much, there's no way that they can do what they say they can do. So I think our attorney spent time with you, and then he came back and was like, wow, it's everything we need. So we moved forward, and at every step, you guys exceeded the expectations of our, attorney and his staff getting everything set up. When we've had questions, you guys have been totally responsive. You've been very helpful. It's been easy to understand and follow, and it does absolutely everything we need at truly a very small fraction of the cost of some of the other guys. So, when we talk, about what we do and how we raise money in crowdfunding, we always mention you and your solution, and we believe strongly in promoting our partners, and the service that you guys provide is on par with the really expensive solutions, but it also gives us the ability to use some of that financial resources to do other things. So we're grateful that we were introduced to you guys, and we're thankful that we're working with you. So we appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah,
Awesome. Thanks, Steve.
we're grateful to be supporting startups and founders like you. Our approach is really like, how do we bring that kind of consumer type experience to enterprise sales? It's like, okay, how do we delight? How do we move quickly? How do we respond? Create software that just sort of does what it's supposed to do at a price that is makes sense. I know that Rajesh and I have a lot of respect for the art of entrepreneurship, and our mission is really to support founders, and so that really gets us up out of the morning, and how to do it at scale. Software.
Yeah, and we appreciate that because it's something that we don't have to worry about. It's money that it's very rare when things are less than you expect it to be from a cost perspective. And when that happens, it just makes everything easier. And that's what you guys provided. It was the service far exceeded what we expected, and the cost was lower than we thought it would be. And I think that's a perfect combination.
So, how are you thinking about, like, if you future raise? Like, do you try to model out your equity as you plan for your next fundraising, or do you really want to do fundraising, or you're trying to target revenue to compensate for capital needed? What's the thought there?
We are. It's something that we struggle with every day. We are very, very close with a few customers that are that are nearing completion of their qualification, and then it will likely turn into some significant revenues here soon. The challenge is how soon. Some of those folks are working with government requirements before they're fully qualified. We're also still in a state where there's not people are still risk averse in trying new things and new materials. So we don't have really good information on if it's going to be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or a year. So we're struggling with that right now. We're trying to figure out, how much do we want to raise for our next raise? Do we want to stay sort of true to our roots and get what we need to try to really maintain the equity on the leadership team and the engineering and the science folks that have been with us since the beginning? Or do we want to find someone who has really deep pockets but may help guide our directions to potentially ways we don't want to go? So we're absolutely doing that. And then and I reached out to you guys just in the last few weeks. Hey, can you show me quickly how to do some modeling? And I think you made a quick video in, I think it was maybe a minute or two. You sent me an email and you said, here, do it this way. And it was very simple and easy to follow. And that certainly is helping guide our decision making. So we're evaluating a number of different scenarios. All of them are completely different from each other, but your platform gives us the ability to model common share raises, different types of raises, safes, debt equity, everything. So we're very appreciative to have the ability to do that with a few clicks instead of trying to spin our wheels and reinvent something that's already been done 1,000 times.
Yeah, yeah, and I think for us the important thing is when you become empowered to make those decisions rather than offloading it to somebody else who may not be as incentivized as you, then it just becomes more powerful from our standpoint where now you make the decision. So we've had so many scenarios where the founders have really thought about, okay, should I do another save, another note, and then they come back after the morning and say, dude, no, I have to run a price down today, convert existing investors so they can absorb some of the dilutions that's going to happen in the future. So it's a lot of aha moment that happens, and that's really what we strive to do. Like, hey, founders, this is important stuff. Get to know this thing. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
Just spend like 5 minutes and you become an expert. So I think that's a piece we get super excited about.
And we do too. And so, I mean, it does take some of the, maybe fear is not the right word, but it gives us the control and the information to where we understand and we're not relying on other people telling us what the outcomes will be. And, as a group that have, a big background in data analysis and science and engineering, we like to be able to see, interpret, modify, model ourselves.
Yep.
And having that power makes a big difference.
Yep, yep. And we had another interesting case last week where the lawyer made the mistake of not using the fully diluted share in the math calculation. They're just looking at the common shares because the company was trying to raise in a crowdfunding, and the math was totally wrong. Like, and this guy was about to fill his form C with the wrong information.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it would have been pretty disastrous. So I think he's already live in a friends and family early bird, but so he was able to catch that and file a form C update. But yeah, these are all very it's easily overlooked. But then yeah, so that's for us. That's really what got us excited. Hey, it's just math.
Yeah.
Let's just program the math. It's super easy to go do that. So now it can scale to millions of customers.
And we've been able to use it, as a small company, without the deepest pockets, we do use options occasionally to help compensate some folks.
Yep.
So being able to model, that over time as well. It sounds simple, but you can get lost in the math, right? It's easy to make mistakes. So to have that is nice. And then the other side of it, keeping up with the board consents and all the documentation, having it in one place instead of trying to find things that, 2, 3 years old from some of our earlier investors. It's been great. And then the feedback that we've gotten from the folks on our cap table is that it's also easy to use. So I think that, it's not only been good for us, but it makes them feel a little bit better. It feels like they have a little bit more control and visibility into their investment at the same time.
Yep, totally. And what is your plan for the future? Are you considering RegCF as one of the options?
Potentially we are. I don't know, what we're gonna do yet, but Reg CF is certainly something that we're interested in. We had a lot of success with it last time. We wouldn't have any hesitations to do it again. There's other advantages to to doing the crowdfunding with regard to how the shares vote and how you can control the the board and everything and your decisions along the way. It's just we're not exactly sure. I think we'll make a decision here in the next few months on what we're going to go, but crowdfunding is absolutely something we're considering.
Nice, nice. So how about so do you have investors ask you, okay, so give us a scenario where you raise on a convertible note today, and then you run a price round in the future? Like, do you run into those kind of conversations with investors or potential investors?
We do on occasion. So when we did raise money, so some of the people that came in with larger investment amounts during the friends and family process, they did invest on a safe. So they do have, they did invest in something that is debt that will convert at a future time. Most of the people that did that are folks that we knew very, very well and who have also been very successful in emerging technology. So they've been pretty patient. There's a couple that that ask that oftentimes, but we've been blessed that the folks that invested in us, believe in the team, believe in the technology, and have been patient. My expectation is when we go for the next round, I think that's when we'll start to have bigger rounds of questions, and I think that's another reason why we're grateful that we're involved with your management software, because it's going to help answer those questions. So not really yet, but we expect that to come here shortly.
And what was your experience? Like, what is your best practice takeaway that you can help other founders trying to do a CF raise? Do you have any checklists that you recommend when you speak with other founders?
I think it's important to be able to very concisely and simply explain what you're doing. Why is your business good? What problems are you solving, and how can you really impact things? One of the exciting things for us about crowdfunding is it gives us an opportunity to talk about what we can do today and what we can do tomorrow, more focused on the vision and the idea, and a little bit less on the financial models. A lot of I would say the traditional investors, they all have their own models. None of them match and none of them are 100% right. But if you don't fit their model, then they don't really want to talk to you. The crowdfunding allows you just fundamentally, why is your business a good thing? And it is a different audience, and I think that for us that was very difficult and challenging. Or we have a very technical business where we do very technical things, but we found a way to explain it in a 2-minute video and to talk about how we really can change the world. And I think the consensus on the team is that really made the difference for us. If we were not able to clearly communicate what we're doing, it wouldn't make any sense, and I don't think we would have been successful. So for us, I would say that is the most important thing that we got from this is we can't do a 30-second elevator pitch because it's too complicated, but we don't need an hour. So let's find a clear and concise way to explain ourselves and what we're doing. And the beauty of crowdfunding is if you can do that, if you really do have access to the crowd, you can probably find 1,000 or 2,000 people that are interested. And if you get 1,000 or 2,000 people and you average a couple $100 in investment, you can get to $500,000 to $1 million pretty quickly.
Yep. I think you just nailed there. You're saying it's a different type of investor crowd. I think that's spot on. And I've been talking to a lot of founders who are considering a crowdfunding, but the biggest question they have is, do I have to expose a lot of my business intelligence to the community? I have to expose my financials, and there are potential competitors out there. So what was your thought process there? Was that a detractor at all? Was that a problem for you all?
For our finances, we had to have a full review. It wasn't a complete audit because we were only going for the $1 million, but it's a review. But we didn't have any problem opening our books. We're actually quite proud of what we've done with the little amount of resources. What we found on the business intelligence and the technical side is people really appreciated when we said, hey, we can't tell you that. This is trade secret. This is a patent that we haven't filed yet, so we can't talk about it yet. But they were appreciative, and they understood that there is value to, not telling them everything.
Yep.
We in our backgrounds, we've always been in very IP intensive industries, where you had to be very proactive and cautious about what you said and you didn't say. So it really wasn't a challenge, and you can also frame it, kind of in a way where, people get excited, that it is kind of secret. But
Yep.
I think you do need to kind of toe the line at sometimes to, make sure you're sharing enough but not giving anything away.
Yep.
And you always have to sort of keep an eye on some of the people that are doing the work that are really excited about it because they want to say things so badly. But you do have to be careful that you don't say anything that would expose or, jeopardize potential patent filings or other protections in the future.
Yep. Yep. And
Steve, really.
in your Form C, you show that. Okay, go ahead, Dustin.
Oh, Steve, I just want to like hit on that point again. I thought it was so interesting where you said that the venture capitalists, they have their formula, they have their model that you have to fit into, and angel investors and retail investors. It's one of my favorite things about being an angel investor is I don't answer to anybody, so I can write a check for any
Yeah.
reason that I want to. And when you're an institutional investor, you kind of get boxed in a little bit. Like you have to have a thesis. Like you go raise from LPs and you tell them how you're going to invest your money, and so you kind of have to always follow some kind of like somewhat rigid formula. And these formulas get put together with like a great amount of experience and interest and thought, but they're always reductive. Like it always is going to reduce this areas that they can invest in. And so investing in VCs can be like really frustrating because like you can have like the greatest idea, but they only sort of like date things that are the color purple and you're blue. And so like no matter what you tell them,
Right.
how great your team is, how big the market is, like what traction you recently have, whatever it is. So, and that goes for even like, I'm not even talking about broadly like going to like a CPG VC with a fintech deal. I'm talking even when you get into like us being 212, like a fintech company talking to fintech VCs, they still have that kind of like, pattern recognition thing they're looking for. And with angel investors, especially so with like nanotechnology, I imagine that's something that like can really respond to, angel investors, like sort of pulls at like some of the, I imagine the people's heartstrings in terms of like bleeding edge transformative tech. Do you think that that's sort of transformative tech, long way to get to this question of like what kind of companies do you think are best suited for crowdfund? Do you think transformative technology companies like yourselves that like maybe the VCs don't all have allocations for are the best kind, or is it companies with like large communities that they can already tap into? Is it companies that can be that have problems that resonate with the crowd, or is it all of the above? What do you think?
It's a little bit, it's bits and pieces of each and some of none. There's a couple things that are kind of working against us. One, right now materials are not trendy anymore. People want to make an app, or they want to do fintech, or they want to do blockchain, or they want to do all these other things that are kind of in the media. And the other challenge that we have is if you look at, say, the history of carbon nanotubes and nanotechnology, really for the last 20 years or so, there's been a lot of promises, but there's been almost no delivery. And so we've talked to a lot of people, investors, customers, partners that say, we tried nanotech, 10 years ago and it didn't work. So we moved on. And the way that we approach this really from an engineering perspective first, we wanted to make a material that was easy to use that solved a lot of those problems. But it's not always the case where we've even been able to have a conversation with folks that tried and failed or tried and had bad experiences. So while, there are companies that we can clearly see we can help, it still takes finding the right person in the right organization to understand that maybe the reason it didn't work 15 years ago is because we didn't fully understand or we didn't know. But that filters through all of the people that we talk to. We've even, in over time with some investor groups, we've gotten pretty far down the line, a couple months in, and you get the guy doing the model that is, I don't want to model nanotech, so I don't think we're going to move forward. So that's also been a challenge. You don't get exposed to the whole team necessarily when you're talking to the VC groups, which can be a challenge. We've had better luck with angels certainly, and finding the right family office to talk to you can be a challenge as well, because materials again are not necessarily seen as the quickest return, but you can find the right people. And then the other side of this that we have is with how the world's going right now, supply chain issues, and maybe not the best relationships between different countries, because everything that we do is made out of materials that are all in the U.S., actually pretty local to where we are. We can provide solutions that will replace things like rare earths or precious metals, and we can enhance commodities. We can make aluminum have higher value. We can make polyester have higher value, which are industries that have left the U.S. So part of what we're doing is also bringing jobs back to areas that have lost them in the past. So you can also find companies, investors, individuals with that vision and those values that might be otherwise not necessarily open to something like nanotechnology, but will spend the time to talk to you and learn. And ultimately, regardless of how technical we are, it's still 100% about the relationships that we have with other people, communities, and organizations. And there's been people that we've known for years where 2, 3 years ago they weren't ready to talk to us about investing, but now they are, because we've been able to spend time and learn about them. They learn about us, and see that our vision, our long-term goals are very similar, though just the way that we want to get there might be different. So it's actually been fun talking to people of with such different backgrounds, and every time you have a conversation, we learn. So that's also been helpful.
And do you keep an open channel with your existing investors, from whomever you raise the CF? So there is a requirement that you give annual updates. Um,
Yep.
and
So
and
we we
what is
try
that?
to we try to do monthly updates. I'd say this year, I don't believe we did one in February, so we're a little bit late. But we provide updates. So we do two levels of updates. We do updates that we send directly to those that invested through the platform, and then we also post on the public discussion boards an update that it's usually time lagged, so it's not the latest information, but that's for folks that are following us as well, and some people that are just interested. So we do both of those activities. We're getting ready to do a web refresh here. We're going to have a bit more proactive presence on some social media this year, where we're going to give some more updates. But it's definitely something that we want to do and we plan to do. We have some pretty exciting announcements to some of the new products that we have. We're adding an official advisory board with some phenomenal people. That's going to come out soon. So we definitely want to maintain a high level of communications, because again, that helps build the relationships, and that's ultimately what grows the business.
Yeah, and I think that also helps when you get ready for your next fundraising. So you already have a set of primed investors that can come in and help you with your next raise.
Especially with the crowdfunding. If we continue to post on the Net Capital discussion board, and it can certainly help drum up some excitement, right? I mean, what we tried to do when we crowdfunded last time is we tried to have a small group of folks that would invest through Net Capital right away to help get that momentum going, by priming that pump, if you will, by keeping that community informed. We would expect that there'd be some people that would jump on pretty quick.
Steve, I know you got to run. One last part of question. It sounds like you had a pretty good experience with Net Capital. If you do elect to do a CF, would you raise through Net Capital again, or would you go and look at some of the other providers? And which of the other providers come to mind that you might look into?
So we've talked to a lot of other providers, and I think what we would do is, Net Capital will certainly be in front of the line. There's I guess pluses and minuses. They're not the biggest. They don't have the biggest community. Their costs are very reasonable. They're not the most expensive. The Some of the other crowdfunding folks, in some cases, we would spend time in looking, who's on their platform right now, what are their offerings, and do we fit? Are we going to be one of 10 that are like us, or Would we be completely unique, or would we be similar to other things? I think that's important because the community that you're working with probably has a lot to do with it. But the other big thing I think would be how much. How much do we raise? And if we went back for 1 million, I think there'd be no reservations with net capital. If we wanted to go for the max now, which I think is closer to 5, there might be some differences. But net capital has some interesting relationships with some more traditional investors, out of New York that are helping them on some of their bigger raises. So I think it's exciting, but we would certainly lean towards going back to them just because the experience was so positive. And I think we like to maintain the relationships that we have with some of the smaller groups and some of the partners. We don't like to go away from people that have helped us in the past. Again, that's another reason why we're excited to work with you guys. You have so many more offerings that we're not yet using, but there's an opportunity to grow. And I think we would prefer to grow together with people that helped us get where we are than to just go for the next shiny thing.
Nice, Steve. Well, really appreciate you having on the show today, and best of luck to you moving forward. I know we'll be keeping in close touch, and we'll have to have you back after your next raise.
Yeah, appreciate it, and thank you very much for giving me the chance to talk today. Thank you, and thank you for your product. 212 is great, and we highly would recommend it to anyone, and we do.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, cheers. Bye.
Bye.